Dr. Bhatia, the consumers are now paying a 2% URA levy in their water and electricity bills. Could you explain why and how this new 2% URA levy was introduced?
Yes, sir. Let me give you a little background. When URA was established in 2007, there was no provision made in the Act how the agency, the URA, will be funded for its budget needs. Usually this is not typical, because whenever a new agency is created by the government or parliament, there is a provision made how its funding will be established. So in the first several years of URA establishment, our funds came mostly from donor community, largely from the GFG, which is the part of the Australian AID, and World Bank, and other ADB and other organizations. So they were funding us. Now in 2013, when I came here as CEO, I was told that we had to, the donor community had completed their program of funding us, and now there is a need to establish our own independent and sustainable source of funding for our budget needs. So I just surveyed how other agencies are funded, and based on that we developed a program and a proposal, what we call as a financial sustainability plan. We submitted that plan to the Minister of Finance in May of 2014, and the plan basically said that because we serve the customers in Vanuatu, that they should be responsible, or they should be the ones who should fund our budget, because we largely serve them. And this way we will not be beholden to the government or to any private interest, and we will be directly accountable not to the utility but to its customers, because those are the ones we serve. So the plan we submitted included that the program that we should assess a fee on the utilities which will be equal to 2% of their annual regulated revenues. So we will collect that fee, but at the same time we will allow the utility to apply a surcharge or apply a fee to the customers on their monthly bill or their quarterly bill, so that they can then recover that, the utilities can recover that money from the customers, so that directly URA is that way funded by the customers. So that program was submitted, that plan was submitted to the government, and SCOM, the Council of Ministers, approved that plan, and but they wanted us to make a public understanding of what our plan was, and so they suggested that we go in different provinces and explain to the general public and the customers what this plan was and how much impact it will have on their bills. And typically, for example, in Luganville, a 2% fee on the customer would be maybe 30 to 40 Watu per month. In the case of Port Vila, it might be maybe less than 100 Watu on a typical bill. So based on that plan then was submitted to the Parliament, and it was supported by the Council of Ministers and a large number of members of Parliament. And we made a town hall meetings in Luganville, in Malakula, Tana, and also in Port Vila. And we got a very high level of support from the general public and from the political and the government. So then the Parliament passed that bill, and it became an act in November of 2016, and that allowed us to establish the rule by which we could invoice the utility, and we decided we'll do on a quarterly basis. So each quarter we invoice the utility based on 2% of their previous year's revenues, and then we send them the invoice which they pay. We have 4 invoices per year. First invoice was in June 1, Next was in September 1, there will be one in December and March. So we have had good support from the utilities and customers, and we have allowed utilities who have paid their dues to apply as 2% surcharge to the customers. So 2% surcharge on the customer bills, so that if a customer, for example, is paying say 50 5,000 Watu per month, if the bill is 5,000 Watu per month, then he will have to pay about 100 Watu additional as a surcharge to cover the expenses of the URA.
So you're saying that there was actually consultation with the consumers before the introduction of the levy?
Yes, there was a consultation here in Port Vila. There was a town hall meetings and consultation in Port Vila, in Luganville, in Malakula, and other provinces, because we wanted to garner the public support and explain to the customers what impact this 2% surcharge will have on a typical bill. And as I said, the typical consumer in a Luganville or Santur area, for example, who uses 30 to 40 kilowatt hours per month, the impact on that customer would be about say 40 Watu per month.
Before the actual introduction of the levy, there was no formal public announcement through the media from the regulator to inform the consumers about the date of the implementation of the 2% URA levy. So there could be a negative perception from the consumers who could consider that the URA had the intention to discreetly introduce the levy without them knowing it. What can you say about that?
Yes, I can understand that because the utilities, for example, in Port Vila, UNELCO, first they opposed this bill, and when it was passed, they said that it is not constitutional, and so they took a legal action against the URA, and as a matter of fact, as a result of that, we had to delay implementation of the surcharge in Port Vila until the court had issued its verdict, and on July 21, the Supreme Court ruled that no, this surcharge or fee is valid and can be applied to the customer, can be charged to the utility and then applied to the customer bill.
So it is applicable now?
Yeah, it's applicable now, and utilities insisted that they should get an immediate recovery of their costs. Because they were paying us a lump sum amount as a quarterly amount, and they insisted that they want to recover that immediately from the customers. So as soon as we received the payment, we allowed them to apply the surcharge to the customer bills. So in a way you are right that there was no formal announcement by the utilities that a surcharge will be applicable to the customer bills.
The utility companies such as UNELCO, VUI, and all the other minor ones will be collecting the 2% URA levy from the customers through the water and the electricity bills. How much money will they be collecting each year from the 2% URA levy?
Our estimate, it is based on the annual revenues of a utility, and sometimes the revenues fluctuate from year to year. But typically, for example, for UNELCO, it will be about 60 to 65 million Watu, per year. Typically, so I would say about 60 million Watu from UNELCO and about 10 million Watu from other utilities in Luganville, and there are water companies and PWD. So total, we estimate that the revenues we generate from this plan would be about 70 million Watu per year.
So it also covers the small utility providers such as the ones supplying water in Beverly Hills, in Teumaville and in Bukura?
Yes, we also applied invoices, issued invoices to small water companies, and most of them have paid, except one company, all of them have paid their quarterly bills for the first quarter in June and also for the second quarter in September. They have paid the bill. PWD also, which supplies water in Luganville, Public Works Department, which supplies water in Luganville, they also paid their bill. And so, except for one small water companies, all other small water companies and electricity utilities and Port Vila Water, which is served by UNELCO, they all have paid their bills.
If my understanding is correct, the levy will also be applicable to all other services delivered by the utility companies to their customers, such as trench digging for a new water or electricity meter. Am I correct?
It says the levy will be applicable to all the revenues generated by utility from the regulated services. So, if, for example, they receive a late penalty payment from the customer, or if they receive for additional services they provide to the customer, under the regulated, services, then the levy will be applicable. 2% will be applicable to all the revenues generated by utility as part of the regulated services.
Dr. Hasso Bhatia, could you tell us how many staff do you employ or do you have in the Vanuatu Utilities Regulatory Authority, URA? And what is the annual operational budget or the annual operational cost of the Utility Regulatory Authority?
Yeah, we have provided budget every year, and our operational costs for the including local staff. We are largely concerned local Vanuatuan staff, and then we have two expert advisors, and then myself as CEO. So our total budget varies between 80 to 95 million Watu per year, and the way we budgeted this 2% fee was on the basis that our own needs will be about 100 million Watu per year, and 70 to 80 million Watu, 70 million Watu will be collected from the utilities, and other 20 million or so may be supplemented from the government funds. And the reason for that is because we provide quite a bit of advisory services to the governments, the Department of Energy, Department of Water and Land, Ministry of Land, and other government agencies. So as a part of that advisory services, we think that they should contribute a little bit. So about 20% will come from the government, and another 80% will be charged to the utilities, who will then pass it on to the customers.
Now, how many staff do you have?
We have currently about 13 technical staff, and we have 4 administrative staff, administrative and what we call corporate staff. So a total of about 17 member staff, not counting the commissioners. We have 3 commissioners, including myself. I'm one of the 3 commissioners, but we have 2 other commissioners. I'm not counting that as part of the staff, but only the technical staff and administrative personnel.
Dr. Bhatia, don't you think that 17 full-time staff for a regulatory authority in a small country like Vanuatu is a bit too much comparing to other bigger player or bigger country in the region?
No, I don't believe so. If you look at the functions that have been assigned to us, the responsibilities that have been assigned to us under the Act, which means we are mandated to carry out those activities and those functions, they are very broad. We have to ensure the safety and reliability of services, the consumer, services like consumer complaint and dispute resolution, So these require a different kind of skills and different kind of disciplines. So as our organization structure, you will see we have 4 divisions. We have we call it consumer, care and engineering division, which has four staff. All 4 are local Vanuatuans. We have 3 persons in the what we call financial and accounting division, and then we have 1 economic and tariff division, and the 4th division is a legal. We have 3 people in the legal division, and the reason for having 3 people, normally you don't need 3 people for legal, maybe 1 or 2 will be enough, but we have had so many legal challenges from some of our utilities that we had to initially hire quite a few local legal personnel in order to minimize the costs of having to hire outside the counsel, which will be very expensive. So we do a lot of our legal work in-house. And then we do a lot of legislative work, as I said, for the Department of Energy, for the Ministry of Land, and other organizations So it requires a different levels of skills and a different training and the level of expertise that we provide.
In cases of legal disputes with the utility companies, as you just mentioned, where did the URA get the money from to fund its legal fees and its lawyers?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have had a lot of legal challenges to our authority and our powers to regulate, and we had to, defend ourselves in the courts, and as a result, and there have been quite a few of those, and so we to defend ourselves in the court, we had to do a lot of legal research, and most importantly, we had to hire outside legal counsel to represent us in litigation. And that is, as you know, is a very expensive, proposal and very expensive, activity. But we have managed that quite well by supplementing the outside legal support with our own in-house legal, research. But still, I would say that on average, we have spent about, 6 to 7 million Vatu in the last 3 years on just outside legal help, And if we did not have that, challenge to our, authority, we would have avoided at least, I would say, 20 million Vatu over the last 3 years in additional, legal expenses that we had to incur. But we had no option, we had to defend ourselves because we want to establish this as an institution, sustainable and robust, and does its job of defending the consumers and protecting the consumers and carry out our responsibilities.
So where did the URA get the money from to cover for its legal fees and for its lawyers in these legal disputes?
Well, as I said, in the last, last 4 years, quite a bit of funding has come from the donor community, the GFG particularly and World Bank. So they have funded the legal fees, but the last 2 years we have funded that from our own budget, our own annual budget, which has largely come from government. But going forward, as I said, our fund will be coming from the levy on the utilities, and actually indirectly or directly from the customers.
Out of the money collected from the levy, 70 million Vatu per year that will be paid by the consumers to the utilities through their bills, as you said earlier. Out of that money, is there going to be any portion of the money that will go to the government?
No. We directly get the money from the utilities. It doesn't go to the government. So we get money from the utilities. If anything, like I said, the way we planned it is that 80% of our funding needs will come from utilities, and about 20% will be supported from money coming from the government. We will not be giving money to the government. We will be depending on the government to provide about 20% of our needs, because we provide them advisory services and technical support and technical expertise. So
the URA has been doing a lot of work to ensure that there is always a fair cost of the services provided to the consumers by the utility providers in terms of water supply and electricity, and that the quality of the services is maintained to a certain level. Since the URA was established in the country and since you took over the positions of CEO of the URA, what can you say about the impact of this institution to the service provided by the utilities? Did URA made an impact? Did it bring changes or an upgrade on the services of the utilities?
Yeah, part of our responsibility to make sure that, for example, that the quality of water that is supplied to the customers is safe and clean and performs and up to the standards of WHO and other organizations. So we make sure that utilities conduct periodically, typically every 6 months or so, they conduct the water testing, and sometimes we have gone to those independent water companies and taken samples ourselves and given it to the lab, to test the water quality. And if we find any problems with the water quality, we immediately, take remedial actions. So we are very concerned about the quality of water that is, a potable water that goes to the consumers. So we do provide periodic, tests. Sometimes, in a couple of times, we have done our testing ourselves paid for the tests ourselves, because if some small water company is not able to pay for the testing, we make sure that the testing is done, even if we have to provide some budget, some expenses. So we have done that. Yeah, and same thing with UNELCO, the water company, water services. We, periodically receive results from them about the water tests, and PWD also provides us the water quality. So that is one area. Same thing in the safety. For example, the electrical system safety, we do periodical checks, and we provide guidelines as to how the safety standards should be maintained. So that is part of our job. Similarly, if there's consumer complaint, then we make sure that the consumer receives a fair, resolution of his complaints. On the issues other than tariff, we have done all these things. In the tariff area, I might mention that in Luganville, for example, where we have had a very little challenge to our authority, we have done taken significant steps to lower the tariffs by almost 30 to 35% in the last 3 years. Plus, we created some funds. What we call, one is Santur Fund, which is designed to provide funding for low-income or outlying areas to extend services and electricity connections to those outlying areas. So we created that fund.
You mentioned the Santur Fund. Is it the substitute for the savings from the Sarakata power plant that was formerly known as the Sarakata Fund?
Yes, you're right. See, before 2011, there used to be money provided by the utility into the Sarakata Fund, Sarakata Hydro Fund. But after 2011, when the VUI took over, the government abolished that Sarakata Fund. So there was no money going from Luganville Electricity Company into the Sarakata Fund. So when I got there, I said, we removed the fund, but where is the excess savings going? So first thing I did was to do a review of really what their costs are, what their revenues are, because they have hydro, so they are very small. There's very low fuel costs. So I saw there were tremendous potential for savings, which were not being accounted by anybody. So first thing I did was to reduce the tariffs of Luganville customers by about 14% in 2014, and again we reduced the tariffs for VUI customers in Luganville by about another 15%. So in 3 years in a row we have cut their tariffs, and at the same time I created, but there were still some savings, from hydro. So we created the Santur Fund, where 1 Watu per kilowatt hour will be contributed into the fund, and we have used that to fund at least 10 or 12 extension projects, and we also established what we call a government fund, and that is for special energy projects as the government may want to utilize, and we have provided funding for Port Olry. We have provided funding through that government fund for Ambe, some extensions and network extensions in Ambe, Sala, and other parts of that in that northern islands.
So there won't be any portion of the money collected through the URA levy that would be used to subsidize extension works or project of the electricity or water supply network, right, Mr. Hasso?
Yeah, the budget the money we receive from utilities is not for carrying out any physical projects. That's not our responsibility. But we use that to monitor, to make sure the utilities carry out the projects and they provide, reliable service to the different, areas and communities, and have a proper extensions to increase the accessibility into different areas. So,
Dr. Bhatia, what would be your last word or your last comment before we wrap up or conclude this interview?
I would say that I'm very satisfied that we have made significant progress in the last 3-4 years to provide support and protect the consumers. And we have had some challenges, no question, and there are a lot more work needs to be done. But I think we have established a very robust institution and a framework and the structure that will allow us to move forward and do even a better job of regulating the utilities and protecting the customers from monopoly services and providing them a good quality, affordable and safe utility services.